Alrighty. Hey gang. Welcome back, you guys. Another episode of Stove Chat, episode 32. How's that? We're cruising. I'm Matt, as always, with Walker Stoves, and welcome to the show, you guys. Thanks for being here. So nice to see all you guys. Hey, Belgian Gulch, Chizo, Ramalia. So, I'm not sure if you guys are going to be able to hear me. I am frustrated again with my internet. You guys know that I had to buy a whole nother. I got a whole nother router. It's right here since it's not working right now. But usually I use this, and it's got a SIM card in it, right? So I buy 5 gigs or whatever of cell service every month just to do the stream, because I can't stream on my DSL, as we're gonna find out right now. But this sucker resets every month, and guess what? Today's the day. So I just spent the last hour on the phone waiting for customer service to try and get them to reboot this thing, and rebooting and all that stuff, and we're dead in the water. So if you guys can hear me, awesome. If not, you might try and slide your slider back. I know I'm going to be buffering. My DSL is, I think my upload is like usually not even 3 kbps, so I probably can't do this, but we'll see what happens here. Hey, Two Chance, nice to see you, if you can hear us. So the good news is that I have been waiting to try and get any option for better internet connectivity, and I got an email 2 days ago from Starlink, and I didn't get their beta offering yet. But it sounds like it's going to be available in my area soon. So hopefully we'll be over this. And we'll just see what happens here. The cell phone internet thing isn't really that sustainable. It's really expensive. And sometimes we go through 2 of them a month if I end up talking for too long, because I'm just right at the cutoff. So I don't know. This might be the last straw. We might not do this anymore for a while until we get some satellites. Yeah, it's gone, says Belgian Gulch. Damn it. I don't know if I should stop and try and downgrade the quality. Anyways, enough about that. I'm just going to keep going, and we'll just see what happens. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Looks like I'm way behind. So I got some great questions this week, you guys. Really good questions, really good emails. Thank you so much, everybody, for sending those along. Everyone's chatting that it's not working. I wonder if I should just give up. Should I just not do it today, you guys? Should we just go away and try another day? So frustrated with my internet. I don't know if it's worth going on. I don't know if it's going to record this. And if it is, it's just going to be terrible. I mean, you guys could watch me try and turn on the other internet. We could sit here for an hour while I get on the phone with customer service again. I don't know what to do. Let's see. I don't know if I can change my settings right now. I probably can't. I wonder if I can wind my bitrate down. Maybe that'll help. All right, I'm just gonna go for a little while, and if you guys slide your slider back, maybe you can catch up, maybe not, but we'll try. Anyways, Ramalia, thank you so much for your question. That's a great question. So Ramalia says, "Hi Matt, I'm considering an outdoor project inspired by the half-barrel bench you showed a few years ago, with bell chambers under the seating for cool Pacific Northwest winters. Do you have tips in hindsight?" Always learning. When I say slider, I mean you can slide the time back. You can change me from live to like 1 minute delay or 2 minute delay, and it should catch up. So Belgian Gulch says good now. That's good. So I cut the bit rate down to where they want us to run at like 200 or 2,400 at a minimum, and we're down at 400 right now. So I'm sure the picture looks terrible, but as long as you can hear me, that's great. So hey, good morning, Clint. Nice to see you, man. Thanks for being here. So yeah, always learning. If you take that backwards a little bit, it might work for you. So I really apologize, you guys. Shack life. It's the price of living as a hermit in the woods. You have terrible internet. So anyways, here's how it goes. Let's see. So Ramalia says, I'm considering an outdoor project inspired by the half-barrel bench you showed a few years ago with bell chambers under the seating for cool Pacific Northwest winters. Do you have any tips in hindsight? Well, Ramalia, we could talk all day about that, but to be honest with you, what I show you there in the video is definitely still how I would approach that for general outdoor use. It's a great system. If you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But in terms of tips, there's nothing in that design that doesn't work, that I would tell you not to do. I love that whole style and that whole build. You know what? At one point, I took a whole bunch of half barrels to a permaculture gathering, and a trailer full of mud, and we just threw it on the ground and threw up a temporary heated seating system, and it was so great. It worked awesome, and it was so easy to throw up and get it up and running. So I think it's a great way to go. I don't really have any caveats for you. If it's outdoors, you want to keep the tops kind of thin so you get warm quickly. Other than that, just kind of your normal rocket stove rules apply, I guess. So, like I said, I'd be happy to answer any more specific questions, but in terms of general tips, I don't have anything that I'd say, like, watch out for this, I made a mistake there, or anything like that. It all functioned really well, and I continue to recommend that style of building for lots of folks. So there's that. So let's move on to another question that I got in email. Someone sent me an email, and I apologize. I don't remember who it was because I think it was a week ago. I actually think I remember who it was, but I won't guess. But at any rate, I'm going to paraphrase the email because I don't have it in front of me. But the email said something along the lines of, "I've read somewhere that a J offers better heat extraction than a batch box system, and can you elaborate on that? And does that mean that a 6-inch J would be compared, or an 8-inch J would compare to a 6-inch batch box or something like that?" And so I would just like to, I've heard that a couple times now, and I think that there's some confusion in terms. So first of all, the wording in that question said more heat extraction. And I'd just like to point out that the heat extraction is a function of the stove after the core. So that really doesn't have anything to do with whether it's a J or a batch, or really even the size. It has to do, the size of the chimney or the core, it has to do with how much internal surface area you have, how much radiating surface, water heating, heat exchanger, whatever it might be, how much heat you're pulling out of that exhaust, and whether it can still run is how much heat extraction you have. So J's batches, no difference in heat extraction between the cores. And then with regards to sizing, I don't think, to be honest with you, that there's a significant difference in output power between, for instance, a 6-inch J and a 6-inch batch. Now, there is some. It's not fair to say that there isn't any output power difference. And the reason for that is because you can simply fit more wood into a batch of the same chimney size. However, the J is really meant to be continually fed. So it's not fair to just say we're going to burn them both for an hour and only load them both once, because in that hour you really could have been sitting there and putting fuel behind the burning fuel in the J, which is how you're supposed to run it. As the fuel burns, you slide it forward and slide more fuel in behind, and it should be basically continually fed, as it were. And so thanks for the vote of confidence there, Amalia. That helps. It's hard when I'm here. So anyways, with regards to sizing and output power, I believe that for all practical purposes, from a design standpoint, like when you're looking at a system saying, well, I want this much heat in my house. Should I choose this or this? I don't believe there's a significant difference between a batch and a J. The biggest difference is really just how you run them. Like the batch, you'll put in your, whatever it might be, 12 pounds of wood and shut the door and walk away. The J, you'll have your 12 pounds of wood stacked next to it, and you might go 3 pounds at a time every 15 minutes or something like that. So, hopefully that gives you some clarity. With regards to heat extraction, again, that's going to be a function of the system after the core. So a system with 3 big empty barrels, or like we see a lot, and we talked about the other day, people who have half-barrel systems that aren't covered with mud yet, so they just have half-barrel metal radiators all through the system with a ton of surface area, they're going to have a ton of heat extraction, regardless of the core. So hopefully that gives you some clarity there. I know I've heard that a few times, and I think, sometimes the forums can be a little bit confusing because there's so many voices, and it's hard sometimes when you're new to be able to, separate the wheat from the chaff, as it were. And so, like I said, I've heard that a few times, and I think it's important. It's a good question. It's important that we get it cleared up because, definitely we hear those things a lot. People say, oh, I heard this one does this, and then it gets to be sort of a known thing. We see that a few times in our short life cycle here already. We've seen some poor technologies adopted because some loud voices said they were great, and we now are just kind of finally starting to get beyond those things. So anyways, there you go on that. So the next question was, I believe, in the same email, and it was asking about cooking in the firebox, using the firebox as an oven. And I think this is just a great way to go. It really depends on your cooking style, what you hope to achieve, your burning style, and all those things. But if you have a batch box, and even a well-insulated batch box, because eventually as long as it's in mass, some people are doing lightweight builds these days, but as long as it's a masonry heater that has, bricks or masonry, cob, whatever, around the whole core, that will eventually, Shack Life is worth it, Belgian Gulch, thank you. So that will eventually heat up enough that even with an insulated firebox, you will get sustained heat in the firebox even after the fire goes out. So using the firebox as an oven, whether you use a high density or a high mass firebox like Firebrick, or a low mass firebox like ceramic fiberboard or whatever, is a great way to use some heat, residual heat in your system after it's mostly done burning, to cook. And for things like roasts, baked potatoes, things like that, where you where you can get away with sort of a bit of a broader range of temperatures. And because what's going to happen, obviously, is you're going to want to put it in there when things are pretty hot, right? And then it's going to go through time, it's going to cool down, and depending on how your stove is built, it probably won't cool down much. So if you're doing something like a long roast that you want to keep it 350 degrees or something, you can put your thermometer in that firebox, and when it gets to be maybe 50 degrees above your target temp, you can put your food in there and let it ride that temperature slope down, and use that as kind of a slow cooker. So a lot of people do that, and it's a great way to cook, and for many people that's really good enough for them, and so there isn't much need to try and do a fancy oven or anything like that. So it's really, like I said, it really depends on what you're cooking. So there you go. How about that sun right above my head? Isn't it funny, you guys? Everything I put up to block it from coming in the camera, it seems like there's just always, it's like just moving with the seasons just enough to keep coming in there. That's not so bad. I don't think it'll get much worse. Those are glass blocks, so it's getting diffused. But so I'm glad you guys are able to hear me now. Thank you for sticking with me. And I'm sorry, I know you guys are probably behind a few minutes, so the chat's going to be a little weird. But it is what it is, and I promise I'll keep working on the internet. Like I said, I got my fingers crossed for Elon Musk, right? I got Starlink. I'm right on the cusp of satellite internet. I'm in the right latitude. I got the email that's available in my area, so I just need to get the beta tester invitation. So we'll see. But if that happens, we're good, man. We'll have all kinds of stuff. We can stream videos and things. That'll be fun. So on to the next question. So positive aspect. This is for you, Dan. I thought we'd talk about this online today. I saw you pop in. I don't know if you're still here. My internet might have scared you off. Oh, there you are. But Dan sent me an email this week, and it was a great question. He was asking about. Well, I'd like to approach it actually from sort of a broad view first, I guess. But well, he was asking about an 8-inch riserless core, which we do have a few examples of. There's one here in the chat. I don't know if David's here today, but David Swanson has built a couple now, a CFB 8-inch riserless core and a cast riserless 8-inch core. And Daniel was asking if I might be persuaded to make the plans for that 8-inch riserless core. And I had to think about it for a little while, and I'm still kind of chewing on it. But one of my responses, or my response to Dan, because I just wanted to send him something as a response, was that I really, and this is where we're going to get into the bigger discussion. And the bigger discussion is really 8-inch versus 6-inch, and we kind of talked about that in the course just a second ago. We touched on it. But 8-inch versus 6-inch, and when, why, how, all of those things, and maybe most importantly, are you going to offer plans, and or why don't you offer plans, or something along those lines. So I'd just like to talk about that a little bit. Now, I do have an 8-inch J core only plan set available on my website. And here, I'll do my little ad. If you guys aren't aware, walkerstoves.com is my website where I sell plans for rocket stoves, rocket mass heaters, and rocket boilers. And go there, check them out. If you buy my plans, that's what we're here for. We consult, and you get to talk and hang out, and we can build cool stoves. I think I need to work on that ad a little bit, but you get the idea, walkerstoves.com. So at any rate, I do have my 8-inch J core on there, and I did draw that up due to quite a few requests for that size. But I haven't yet drawn up plans for a full stove to go with that core. And in the case of Dan's request, which was for a riserless core in 8-inch, and I also have gotten just a few requests for a batch box in 8-inch. And so what I wanted to say is that, you know, one of the probably the first question that I get, and many of you who are helping folks work on rocket mass heater ideas for their space, you know, one of the first things we always see, and I think Belgian Gulch and Tall Shadow, if you guys are here, I know Belgian Gulch is, if you know, you guys see this a lot in the forums, I'm sure, is people wanting, you know, they get excited about rocket mass heaters, and they get enthusiastic that it's going to be the magic bullet for every home, and they come in so excited about heating their 2,500 square foot home, 3,000 square foot home, 3-story home with a rocket mass heater in the basement, whatever it might be. They want a lot of heat. They have a big heating job that they need to do. Hey Doug, nice to see you. You missed all the fun. We're just getting to the good stuff. So they want big heaters, right? And that's usually what people want. And you know, I hate to say it, but rocket mass heaters just aren't great big heaters. We've talked about it before, the burn time, the way the burn cycle works. Because that burn cycle works the way it does, we have pretty stringent air-fuel mixing requirements, and this is all a long way of saying that to get them bigger, they just get exponentially bigger and bigger and bigger. And since they're mass heaters, you know, we're working in a DIY framework here, something that people can build themselves. So I don't feel comfortable, you know, recommending heater builds when they're getting to be 10 tons or something. I mean, whatever it might be, but you know, an average heater of one of ours is 1 or 2 tons. So that's a 6-inch heater. An 8-inch heater typically is going to be just about double in size everywhere. So you're getting up to, you know, I don't know, 4 tons, whatever. And as people get more excited about heating bigger spaces, they just want to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think there's a few pitfalls there. And first and foremost is just that my goal, of course, is to make these things really accessible. Easy, not scary. We want people to be able to dive in, build these things, and succeed. And I think that the bigger stoves just provide a whole lot more challenge, a lot more expense, a lot more engineering when you're talking about weight on floors if you have them, or in height, masonry starting to get tall and big structures. You start to get into some things that really require a little bit more consideration and probably a lot more expense. So there's part of my 8-inch thing. So really what I'm getting at is I've been reluctant to do many 8-inch designs for a host of reasons, but mostly it's that people will come and want to heat a big giant space, and when they see that there's a larger one available, they'll naturally gravitate towards that without realizing that, one, it's a huge undertaking comparatively to the 6-inch. It's not huge. I don't mean to scare you off if you want to build an 8-inch. They are buildable. But for many of these people, this is the first time build for a lot of people, and the idea of plans is to give them something they can succeed at. And the 8-inch stoves, more than any of those concerns, is really just that I think it encourages people to take a leap at something that probably still isn't really probably the right thing for their needs. And that's really where I'm going is, I spend a lot of time talking people out of rocket mass heaters. And I think it's important. I think it's really important that we, try and fit these to people as best we can so that everyone has it, so we have a consistent story. So people come back and say it was awesome. I mean, we do see fail videos out there, and I can usually see why, people chose to take one out or it didn't work for them or whatever. But my goal is to make sure that people weigh those things with appropriate information going into that. And so this is all a long way of saying that 8-inch stoves, and especially as we get into something like the riserless, which is a large square box. It's about, let's just for discussion's sake, it's about 2 feet square in a 6-inch system. In a 8-inch system, it'd be about 4 feet square, and now you have to have spans going across that space, cooktops, burn chamber ceilings, things like that. And everything gets a lot more difficult as you start to try and cover big spans, build big things. So that was a long thing about 6 and 8-inch chimneys, but really what I want you to take away from this is that I personally believe that 6-inch is really the sweet spot for a rocket mass heater in terms of effort you put into it, heat you get out, all of those factors, size, space it takes up in the room, cost to build, all those things. And I'm not so sure that when you start to go bigger that things don't skew a little bit. The main thing is that the new big modern box stoves, if you have a giant space, those new big modern box stoves are probably very close, if not every bit as efficient as our rocket mass heaters in daily use. We might be able to test a little higher. Peter's running the test and he's doing a drag race. He can get some amazing numbers, but when you're burning it at home, you're not getting his numbers. Neither am I. And so from my experience, I think the best box stoves are close to our good rocket stoves, and a big box stove just cranks out BTU. So if you have a big, huge space, might be a better choice. So that's all. So Belgian Gulch says you're getting good at your pitch. I'm not sure if you mean my Walker Stoves pitch or my talking you out of rocket mass heaters pitch, but thank you, my friend. So anyways, let me catch back up with the chat. That was enough about that. I think you guys get it. What I'd love to hear from you, really, I was hoping for a little two-way on that discussion, but I know that my internet's probably going to make that tough. But I'd love to hear from you guys if you feel like there's more need for 8-inch than I'm aware of. If you'd like to see 8-inch riserless plans, things like that. I like I said, I haven't gotten enough requests. I mean, a few, very few. And so, and they take, it's a lot of work to put them together. It's not a big deal. I can do it in some, this winter for sure and get one up, but I don't usually, to do them for one sale every year or whatever, just isn't worth my while, really. But anyways, that's, I guess, my push on that is I'd love to hear if people are really clamoring for 8-inch systems, and if they really believe that that's where they want to go with that. So I'd love to just have more of that discussion. I just told you guys my feelings on it. I could be totally off base. So let me catch up with the chat because there were some great comments there. Let's see. There was one from Always Learning, who says, wouldn't heat extraction efficiency be determined by the chimney gas exhaust temperature? Exactly right, Always Learning. And you have to remember that, so we're talking about, he's saying, which is right, how much heat is left in the chimney exhaust when it comes out is how you can tell how efficient your heat extraction was. Ideally, that's going to be, if you could get all of the heat out, it would just be coming out at room temperature. If you were even better than, efficient, you could get it send it out cold if you were using some kind of powered system. But yes, Always Learning, that is the ultimate measure. But when we talk about a system, whether it's capable of heat extraction or whatever, there's more to it than just what's the temperature coming out of the chimney, because I can build that big bare half barrel system that has bare half barrels all over the place, and we can light it up, and no smoke's going to come out the chimney. All the smoke is going to be cold and condensed, and it's going to pour out all of my gaps at floor level. But if you were to measure that smoke, and I've done this, not there, but I've measured like a crazy smoky burn in my chimney with a testo, and you get amazing efficiency numbers. Like, you get the highest numbers you can ever get when the thing is just choking on wet, cold smoke, because it's extracted all the heat. And the reason it's choking on wet, cold smoke is because it's making that smoke because it doesn't have enough draft to fire the front end to burn cleanly, because you've taken too much heat out of the chimney and you have no draw. And so it's just smoldering away in the front and slowly smoldering that smoke through the exhaust. And you take all the heat out of the smoke. It's super efficient. But it's an absolute disaster. So this is a good example of how the whole thing's a system, how it all needs to be looked at, as a system, everything affecting everything else. And you can't just take things like overall efficiency as the end-all be-all, because I could certainly give you an amazing testo run that you wouldn't know, Peter would know, some people would know, but I could show you great numbers from a burn that was just blowing black smoke, so keep that stuff in mind when we talk about these things. So when we talk about heat extraction efficiency, what we're really talking about, when I'm saying it, when I'm talking about a system, I'm talking about your whole system, your whole heater, your whole stove, and how much heat it can extract from the exhaust and still run efficiently. And of course, that's going to change day to day, right? Like, if it's really cold out, you're going to be able to take a lot more heat out of the exhaust than you can on a really warm day. So keep all those things in mind. So Dutrance says, big rocket stoves would hinder conversation. Think of the roar. That's great. And on that note, I keep talking about how big they get and how we don't see them very big, but I still haven't seen if Eric in Australia has finished his 10-inch monster, and I think there's an outdoor 10-inch somewhere in Europe, but I would like to see a real 10-inch system burning. I bet it's something to see. But you get into those sizes and they just get, the whole system is massive. But it sure would be cool, wouldn't it? So let's see. We got some more questions here. Just bought plans, but want to make Firebox big enough for container to make biochar. Hey, Jeremiah. Nice to see you, man. Long time no see. Hope you're doing good, my friend. So go tell him, Willie Boys here says, I just bought plans. Want to make the Firebox big enough for container to make biochar. And I think that we might have talked on email about this project. And I just got another email this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, from another fellow who's building the boiler, who also asked about enlarging the Firebox. And so this is a great time. We should just talk about enlarging the Firebox, or really changing the core design in any way on any of these core plans. And I'm just going to start by saying, from the standpoint of efficiency and cleanliness and all good tested rocket properties, usually modifying the core in any way is basically a no-go. We want to leave that core exactly as designed if efficiency is your primary goal. Like if you are interested in a rocket mass heater because of the things that a rocket mass heater is known for, then you probably don't want to modify the firebox because it will dramatically affect your efficiency. Now, you're making biochar. You probably don't care too much. Your goal is to make biochar. Biochar is kind of burning off and typically wasting a bunch of heat to get to the clean burning charcoal. So efficiency really probably isn't too much in your, you probably just want to be as efficient as possible, but you're working under a whole different set of circumstances. So basically what I'm trying to say is, and this is what I told the guy with the boiler too, I was like, your goals are your goals. And I definitely think that it's worth experimenting with. I definitely think the rocket mass heater makes a great platform to start from to achieve whatever your goals are that are different from the original rocket mass heater. So by all means, I encourage you to experiment, but I do want to be clear that anyone looking to buy rocket mass heater plans and, wanting to have the cake and eat it too, in the sense of like, I want your efficiency and your numbers and your clean burning and your all of these good things, but I need a bigger firebox. You can't do it. You're just below the whole testing. The core the core design is basically out the window because it's such a delicate balance. It's like a carburetor. You've got air and fuel in a very, very delicate balance, and if you change those parameters at all, which in the case of biochar, you're going to be changing them dramatically because you have tons of fuel in there too, and different air volumes. You're probably going to end up with something that isn't terribly clean or efficient. But again, that might not be your goal. In the case of the fellow with the boiler, he just wanted a long burn. That's what the plans are for, is to give you kind of the best starting point. And then if you want to deviate from there, and I'm not pointing fingers or saying that's a bad thing, it isn't. It's just, I want you to have the information so you make that choice consciously, rather than just, thinking that you can then take that core and go willy-nilly and it's still going to give you the same performance. It definitely won't. So there you go. I do know that biochar is really, you have a whole nother set of goals. And that doesn't, I see you say you also want cooking in hot water. And like, I'm not saying, I do think you'll still get those other functions. I'm just trying to say it won't be as efficient or clean as it would be if you didn't do that. Now, how different will it be? I don't know. It really depends on how much you change it, how much fuel is in there and things like that. Is it a big deal? I don't know. It might be just fine for your goals. It might still heat your water, do all your cooking, and it might not be blowing so much smoke. The downside is if you do make a real bad smoke, or, if it's really, the firebox gets really affected, then you're going to be blowing some creosote and stuff like that downstream, and you could be creating sort of a waterfall, like a cascade effect of negative effects. But I think it's worth experimenting with. I mean, those are your goals. So, I think it's probably worth a try. So there's that. And that topic, that conversation really is about modifying the cores. So, one of the things about these stove plans that I offer is I offer, you guys access to me, my consulting, to build the stove that you really want. And it's really neat because these stoves, as we've talked about many times, are super modular. You've got the core and the body, which consists of usually a few spaces that have functions, but it's basically just bricks. And it's very, very, very malleable to your goals as long as we follow certain rules. And one of those rules really is we just want to leave the core exactly as, we want to leave the core unmodified. And so Jeremiah says exactly what my thoughts have always been about a biochar thing, which I don't know if it was you I was talking to, Willie Boy's here, but if you, like Jeremiah says, I think if the char container was the cooktop, exactly. So my what I picture with a biochar thing is that the core stays the same. The biochar creation happens after the core, where the cooktop would be, and then you could pipe that wood gas back into the firebox to continue combustion. But I don't think if you mess with the core shape in any way, and this is not just for biochar, but anyone wanting to enlarge the firebox for bigger burns, I think you really are going to dramatically change the nature of the burn. And I talk about efficiency, but what a lot of people don't realize is that if we're talking about efficiency, we're saying that the core isn't getting, it's burning dirty, and that means it's usually got more fuel than air, and that typically means it's smoking, and that almost always means that it's actually burning cooler than it would be if it were burning cleanly. And so you'll find that as you take these things farther away from a clean burn, you start to lose the ability to get those really high peak temperatures. Now, how far off, there's probably a lot you can do with that firebox before you really start to see that. But it's important to remember that the efficiency and the cleanliness comes from peak temperatures. And so the farther you stray from that, you do start to have a colder burning stove, and it starts to be less effective at things like heating water and cooking on top. So just keep those things in mind. And as you say, I'll try and find out. And I think that's the best we can hope for. I think it's worth a try. And I'd love to hear how it works for you. So there's that. And that's really, I guess, really what I'm out of all of that. I just want to say, don't expect to change the core and still have it be the same. That's mainly it. But it's worth doing it. Worth doing it to find out. So let me catch back up to the chat here, and let's see. So that was, we talked a little bit about a question regarding new plan sets for 8-inch systems, and I told you guys sort of how I feel about those, and like I said, if enough people request them, I'd certainly put those 8-inch plans out. But I'd love to hear feedback. But on that note, I have started to get requests for some other core designs as well. And someone asked me about Peter's new DSR2 and whether I had any plans for that. I've actually had, I think, a couple requests for that now. And in this question, he really just asked me to compare it to my riserless and other cores. And I think it's really interesting. Peter is so awesome. He's an experimenter. He's having a great time playing with the parameters and publishing the testo data and experimenting. But I look at each core that we have in the rocket stove world, and I look at their functions and their features, and I try and see pros and cons and why one fits here and one fits there. And to be honest, for the DSR2, I haven't. There's a few things it offers that. Actually, it really only offers one thing that I think sets it apart, that makes it maybe someone would lean towards it as opposed to one of the other cores, and that's the view in that top section. It's pretty cool. It's neat to look at. You can do the same thing in my riserless core like David Swanson has done, but it's they're horizontally as opposed to vertically placed, the two chambers, and really what it comes down to is the DSR2 for me, to put it into a stove design, it still has a pretty tall build over height. So your firebox is going to be on the floor, and you still are probably not going to be able to have an appropriate height cooktop. You might be able to get it right at 32 or whatever cooktop height is, but there's just there's a lot more height build issues than there are with my riserless core, which only has a build over height of like 16 inches as opposed to 36 or whatever it is. I'm just guessing it probably is something like that. But so from a height standpoint, if you're going to have a stove with the firebox on the floor, if it's got to be there and it's got this much height anyways, then the standard batch box is, it's really amazing, and it's easy to build, and it's just got a lot of simplicity and proven, time testedness, and all that just makes it sort of the natural choice for a masonry heater where height isn't an issue. And if it's a cook stove and height is an issue, then I think that, my riserless core is a better option. They're all DSR, riserless, batch, the J in 6-inch configuration. They're all going to be roughly the same heat output. They're all going to be real close to the same efficiency. So I'm not picking on the DSR2. I think it's awesome. But I sort of see it as Peter's, it's a pet project. He loves to just play with different shapes of combustion. And I think it's really neat, but like I said, I don't see a ton of advantage to it over the other cores that are out there right now. Like I said, with the exception of maybe the viewing window. And so one of the folks who was interested in the core was for an outdoor seating and having that fire view, which I think that's probably one of the best applications for it, is anywhere where, the fire view is really of paramount concern. But otherwise, I think for the most part, I would go with, depending on what you're building, one of the other stove cores is probably going to be a better fit. But all that said, I'm curious. So, I am open to the idea of offering more core plans, more designs. So I may, down the road, I know he's still tweaking it a little bit, but down the road I may add those to the stable of plans that we offer. But I'd love to hear your feedback if you have any. So there's that. And that was mostly a response to asking me to compare those two. So let's see. With that said, let me go back up through the chat and catch up with you guys. Jake says, for high BTUs, perhaps an RMH would be complementary to a box heater. So, Jake, that is so awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Excuse me. This is, I think, one of the magical things of rocket mass heaters that you don't really realize until you have one and live with one, is that as an accessory heater, they are just truly a luxury item. They just make life so pleasant. They do work great as primary heaters in an appropriately sized space. But for all those people who want a rocket mass heater, but their space is large, their space is spread out, they might already have central heat, I think that's a perfect installation situation for like a cook stove as the centerpiece in your house. If it doesn't have to keep the whole house warm, then you can really use it in such a nice way. You can burn it once in the morning to have coffee and make breakfast, and then it just kind of radiates a nice mellow heat and just keeps the center of the home just comfortable and cozy, and it's so nice to gather around. As opposed to trying to heat the home with it, where it's still nice, but you're feeding it. You're trying to run it hot, depending on how you sized it to your place. So where Jake says perhaps an RMH would be complementary to a box stove, but I'd just like to point out that I think RMHs are amazing complements to a home that already has an effective heat source. And I get that question a lot. People saying, can I do this? Can I do this? And, my answer to anyone who is looking at, often I'll get, I'm in North Dakota and I have a 2,000 square foot house. Can I heat my home with your space? We have an oil burner. We'd like to use it less. And I say, you can't heat my home with your space entirely, but you can take a big load off that oil burner and you can use it in conjunction to make your home actually really pleasant all the time, instead of fiddling with the thermostat to try and manage your financial goals and all the other things that come along with that stuff. So that's really the gist of it, is that they are so great as complementary heaters that I'd love to encourage more people. And that kind of circles back around to the 8-inch, 6-inch thing too. I'd love to encourage more people to just accept the 6-inch size and build those heaters in appropriate places where there might be complementary heat and enjoy them rather than have them be almost enough, if you know what I mean. So that's a great addition there, Jake. Thanks for adding that. You scroll back up through the chat a little bit. Positive Aspect says, my main interest in the 8-inch riseless is a large outdoor water heater. Spanning could be really tricky with such a large weight on top. So yeah, Positive Aspect, that is one of the biggest issues, is that span. There's a lot of ways to get around it, but most of them really come up as being basically a stand for your whatever's above it, and then kind of a riser going into that area anyways. And I've found that well, for one, you start getting that big and you start getting not that comfortable supporting huge things that high. And so then if you're not going to do that, and you kind of want your heat exchange to be downdraft, like, why not build a big 8-inch J and put a barrel next to it and have things come down into there, or a heat exchanger. There's a whole lot of ways to go. The old Tim Barker style, which I love, which is 55-gallon drum just over the J, that's great, and it works awesome for a 6-inch. But as we just said, you start to get into an 8-inch, and you start to get into some bigger issues in terms of supporting things. So yeah, it's something to think about. I definitely am not opposed to the idea either. We'll have to kick it around a little more. But yeah, and we can pretty easily convert that 6-inch to 8-inch. I just, that doesn't require a whole lot of effort, and it doesn't require putting them on the I don't need to sell them, right? We could just do a conversion for your guys. But anyways, there's that. So Jake says DSR. Yeah, the DSR is I think it was double shoebox riser or something. I don't remember what it stood for. But it's basically just essentially it's what Vortex has been running. If you guys follow Donkey's board, Vortex had his Vortex stove a few years ago. He started to build a new stove, and right about that time, I believe it was a guy who goes what handled DC-ish, but I'm not sure. But I think DC-ish did a version of my core, the riserless, with a little bit different port, and that sort of opened up Peter's eyes to some different concepts, and he started working on the top box and stumbling block, and Vortex incorporated that. I mean, I might be getting this slightly wrong, but this is sort of the gist of the way it unfolded. Basically, between DC-ish kind of figuring that out, and then Vortex sort of tweaking his Vortex stove, and concurrently with Peter playing with the DSR, and now Peter's kind of refining that DSR to try and meet his goals. And I'm not really clear on the DSR-2 thing, but basically whenever he gets to his latest iteration and kind of calls it done, I still think it's a little early. I haven't seen any of them built into a full heater yet. And, it's important to see how these cores run under different loads. Full heat extraction, no heat extraction, everywhere in between. So I think he's still got a little work to do. But yeah, that's the DSR-2. Okay, so let's go back. We should let's see. Yeah, we should just take a look at some photos real quick and get ready to wrap this up. So thanks for bearing with me on the internet, you guys. I know it's not that great, but we're working through it. So this is Belgian Gulch, and he's been just building and building and building, and it's so Thanks for telling me you lost audio there, Mart. I think I can get it back. I'll just stay here for a sec. So we were talking about plastic, burning in plastic. Mart asks, has anyone got a high temp rocket stove to burn plastic? Oh no, Willie, you can share your link with Biochar. That's fine. Thank you for asking. So Clint says, can't find single wall black pipe. Can I use the lighter weight galvanized single wall that I find at Home Depot? I'm not sure what part of your stove you're asking about, Clint, but I would recommend not. I would recommend that you get your proper black pipe. Galvanized single wall is, HVAC pipe, and while I've used it in builds before, particularly in buried cob sections, I really don't recommend using it as an exposed chimney if that's the part that you're asking about. It's highly unlikely that you'd ever get it hot enough to off-gas that zinc into your space, but it is possible, and it's a real risk. And I don't know. It's up to you, but I would say no. I would definitely recommend that's not a go. So that's my opinion. Okay, so going back to the burning the plastic, I haven't heard of anyone successfully doing it. I'll be honest, I don't think that we can get high enough temperatures in a rocket mass heater to burn plastic cleanly. I think I looked into it at some point, something to do with cracking a few molecules that just have a really high temperature for that, and I don't think we get anywhere near it. So I think you can certainly burn plastic, but I don't think you'll be able to burn it cleanly in any kind of rocket mass heater, unfortunately. So there's that. So I'm gonna switch back to the photos. Give me a sec. I'll try and get the microphone working over there, and we'll try and take a look at Belgian Gulch's work here. So bear with me for a sec. Check. Okay, now hopefully you guys can hear me. All right. So here we are looking at Belgian Gulch's stove, and Belgian Gulch, I know you have been working hard on this. So this is so cool to see. Thank you so much for sending along all the photos. So this is his 7-inch shop stove. I know he's been building it and rebuilding it. I think he just did an insulated firebox. There's a door he's working on for me. As you guys know, Belgian Gulch is now Dragon Tech rocket mass heater hardware. So he's a resource you can use to get doors or secondary air parts for your builds. So there's a door he's working on for me. Needs some paint. It's really close. And here's his 7-inch build, just about wrapped up. So this is so cool to see, Belgian Gulch. Thank you. And I think he rebuilt his firebox, and it looks great. It looks so good. So, and I'm not sure what we're seeing there. I think that's some metal spans holding his top, maybe? I'm not sure, Belgian Gulch. You can feel free to chime in if you're still around. Although, now I'm thinking about it, we're probably way behind. So, yeah, there it is. That was the top span. So he's got metal T-bar in there or angle iron to carry that top span. Oh, that's right. He was going to put bricks across the top of that. Okay, well, the pictures are, I think that's about all I got from him today. So I guess what we're looking at is his new 7-inch build. And so this is really cool. He rebuilt this firebox. He put a new roof over that bell in the back there. That's what it is. It's these new bricks on the new roof. And apparently it's working really, really well, according to the email that you sent today, which I love to hear. So this is such a cool build. It looks like it's just keeping that shop toasty warm. You guys can see he's got snow outside already. Awesome. This is so cool. So there's that. So I'm really looking forward to getting my door. I can't wait to try that thing out. So very, very cool stuff. So thanks for sending that along, Belgian Gulch. Feel free to share. I know I'm just kind of glossing over it. I sort of, I know you rebuilt the firebox, and I know it works really well for you. But yeah, that's it. If you got anything to add, throw it in there. So yeah, Jeremiah. Yeah, let me go back to the main cam here. So Jeremiah asks, would you talk about burn chamber stretching again? Sure, I'd love to. So we did just talk about modifying the core earlier in this stream, and I was talking about how that's typically a bad idea, and you will almost certainly negatively affect your efficiency. Well, there's one dimension that has some leeway, and that's the depth or the length of the core. So if your firebox is, I think most of our, as designed, they're typically right around 18 inches, and you want to be able to put in bigger fuel, you can extend that firebox, leaving the height and width the same. And according to Peter anyways, you will not dramatically affect the efficiency. Now, how long can you extend that? I don't know. I imagine there's a limit. But you can certainly stretch it out, 4 inches maybe, without any detriment. 12 inches, I don't know. Probably going to start to have some effect. But as long as the width and height are the same, then we have the same cross-sectional area of the firebox. And I tend to think that throughout the whole system, cross-sectional area rather than volume is really what we're looking at. With the exception of heat extraction, where we have the whole surface area. But typically we're looking at just a snapshot of the in-section view of the cross-sectional area. And so I think that you can stretch the firebox to some degree without a major penalty. How long that is, I don't know, like I just said, but it's worth experimenting with. I still, when people write me and ask me about building a bigger firebox, I'm still always going to tell them that there's going to be an efficiency penalty. Because, like I said, maybe, the plans are designed so that there's already like 3 inches of variance on that firebox, depending on where your door goes and your bricks and all that stuff. So there's already some firebox variance built in. When people talk about extending it, they're usually going to add on a significant amount more. And so I just want people to be aware that there may be some penalty there, but it's hard to say. I can't say that definitively. So worth playing with. And as Mart says, it would help for big logs. So that's really cool. It would really help for big logs. So Belgian Gold says, okay, I see what he did. So what he did to that core was he added the insulated bricks around the core. So he went from a high mass firebox. I'm assuming, did you have no insulation in there before? I think he went from a high mass firebox to a low mass firebox. And that, he says, made an enormous difference in performance. As he says, high performance upgrade. And what I love about this Belgian Gulch is that you are getting to experience it firsthand. You know that's my rant, right? Like I have been saying this over and over and over for so long, how much I personally prefer the insulated firebox. And I've let people have said, it's not going to hold up, and I don't want one because they're not durable. And I say, well, that may be. I think you should try it before you make that decision, but I've tried them, and I know which one I choose. I'm not saying that's what you'd choose, but I do think it's worth, experimenting with. And what I've found is that when people like Belgian Gulch, and I think David Swanson has had the same experience, when they experiment with it, they find that the insulation makes such a difference in performance that it's well worthwhile any perceived downside. And as we've talked about many times, I think that the downsides are simply just that. They're just perceived. I don't think it's any significantly weaker or requires significantly more maintenance. They're weaker in some ways, stronger in others. There's differences. You guys know my shtick on that. So there's that. So I know I'm way behind on chat, you guys. I know that this stream is lagging, so I know it's probably hard to have the discussion, but so I apologize for the two-way lag there, Belgian Gulch. But yeah, but that's the deal is I love seeing you guys go through these steps and coming to you know, some of the same conclusions that I've reached, and it's really rewarding. It makes me very happy, and more than that, I think that that we can finally start to get better information out there. You know, we can finally start to have a little bit more of a unified front moving forward, and let people know really what works and what doesn't, and things like that. So Jeremiah Shine asks, what about kiln shelving as a layer in a riserless core? And I think that's a great material, Jeremiah, to use in many places. I don't have enough experience with it to say that, like in the riserless core, like for the top, you know, to separate the layers in the top or the bottom would probably be okay. The top, I'm not sure, because it's 24-inch square. That's a lot of span for that much heat change differential. You know, the ceramic fiberboard holds up fine. I assume the kiln shelf would be fine too, but I'm not 100% sure, because the firebox side, when you start it, is going to be a lot hotter than the combustion chamber side for a few minutes, and maybe that disparity is enough to cause it to crack. I know it's a lot harder than like the CFB, but it might be a great choice. It's a real, I find kiln shelf material to be a great building material in general. But I just am always wary of really big spans and single pieces of material where the temperatures are greatly different across them. If it's not CFB, it's at risk in a situation like that, in my opinion. So there's that. So all right, you guys, I think that's enough for today. We covered some good stuff today. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me on the internet. I really apologize for the issues. Seems like I'm working through it, but it just throws a wrench in front of me. It seems like just about every week. So I apologize. Thanks so much for your patience. Thanks for your great questions and comments and all your support, you guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. It's so nice to have such a great community. So thanks for being a part of this. It's really the highlight of my week, and I look forward to seeing you guys every week. So yeah, I hope you guys have an awesome week. I've been having some wonderful moments with my fire and my stove. I got to tell you, it's getting cold. And I was reading the other night, you know, on a rainy night, cozying up against the bricks, and I was just really conscious, really aware of how much I was appreciating the luxury of my little masonry heater. So yeah, just wanted to share that I love sharing that with you guys. So I hope you guys are getting some enjoyment as well. So yeah, so have a great week, you guys. We'll come back and do it next week, episode 33. Please send me some more photos, send me some more questions. I do have some more builds we can look at, and it seems like we never run out of stuff to talk about. So let's do it next week. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm going to hit the outgoing video, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a great one, okay? Thanks. Bye.